My uncle did not ask for anything big. He only looked at the jar on the top shelf and said, "Just a little, the old way." That was the moment I realized our version of helping him might have started erasing him. When I was 9, my Uncle Mateo taught me how to brown onions slowly, not because he thought I needed a life skill that early, because he understood that grief behaves better when your hands are busy. My mother had been sick for so long by then that the apartment already felt like a place where everybody whispered, washed dishes carefully, and tried not to ask what next month would look like. Mateo never talked to me, like I was a child, being protected from the truth. He just tied a dish towel around my waist, set a stool by the stove, and said, "If you watch the pan, it will tell you when it trusts you." It was the kind of sentence that makes more sense years later. After my mother died, I spent most Sundays at his row house. He worked nights back then, fixed elevators during the week, and still found the patience for long soups, roasted peppers, and stories that always started as if I already belonged in the middle of them. He had one habit I used to tease him about. Every bowl, every plate, every simple meal ended the same way. He would reach for a little glass jar filled with crisp, salted crumbs he made himself from stale bread, olive oil, and a ridiculous amount of chopped herbs. He called them his finishing weather. A meal should sound finished, too, he liked to say, sprinkling them over the top until everything looked awake. He said food needed texture the way rooms need windows. I heard that phrase so often I still think of him whenever anything bland tries to pass itself off as complete. Last winter, he had a health scare. Not the dramatic, television kind. The real kind. 3 nights in the hospital. A folder of instructions. A new pill organizer. A list of things that were now supposedly small enough to surrender. Less salt. Less oil. No cured things. No finishing crumbs. No improvising. His partner, Elena, became excellent at keeping him alive. I mean that sincerely. She took over appointments, medication alarms, follow-up calls, meal planning, and the slow, invisible labor that makes recovery look neat from the outside. She color-coded containers. She labeled shelves. She started reading ingredient panels like they were witness statements. The house got healthier. It also got quieter. Mateo stopped joking in the kitchen. He stopped hovering near the stove. He stopped saying, "Taste this first." When Elena explained the new rules, I followed them. Of course I did. Because what kind of person argues with the one carrying most of the burden? What kind of niece decides she knows better than the partner who has been waking up for the midnight medication, tracking blood pressure, and pretending not to be tired? So when I came over on Sundays, I cooked the approved version. Less seasoning, more caution, no jar on the counter, no finishing weather. At first, I told myself he was adjusting. Then I told myself this was maturity. Then I stopped naming what I was watching, because that would have required admitting there was something to watch. It happened on a humid Sunday in July, the kind of evening when even the walls seemed to sweat. Elena was setting out bowls when her phone rang. The pharmacy had messed up. One of Mateo's refills again, and if she did not get there before closing, he would miss a dose. She looked furious, then exhausted, then guilty for being both. "The soup's basically done," she said. "Just keep it warm. And please don't add anything. He already had enough sodium today." I said, "Of course." She squeezed my shoulder, called back, and left with her purse half open. The front door shut. The house changed shape. Not in a magical way. Just enough that we could hear our own breathing again. Mateo was sitting at the table with the old blue bowl he always chose for soup. He looked toward the pantry, then at me, then back at the pantry. I knew the look before he spoke. It was not stubbornness. It was embarrassment. "Do you still know where she keeps it?" he asked. I said, "Keeps what?" He smiled a little, because now we were both lying. "The crumbs," he said. "Just a little, the old way." He said it softly, like a man borrowing something that used to belong to him. I stood there with the ladle in my hand, and felt suddenly furious at how small the request was. Not because it was unreasonable, because it was small enough to reveal everything. If he had asked for whiskey or steak or some huge dramatic rebellion, I could have hidden behind medical language. But this was a pinch of something he used to make with his own hands. A last touch, a sound at the end of supper. A piece of himself stored in a glass jar like contraband. I reached up, found it behind the tea tins, and brought it down. The jar felt lighter than I expected, like it had already been disappearing for weeks. Elena said no extras. I told him. I know, he said. He did not argue. He did not guilt me. He did not say I owed him. He only looked at the bowl and then at the jar again. It is strange how quickly a person can understand that they are no longer being asked for a favor. They are being asked which kind of love they plan to serve, protection or recognition. I sprinkled the smallest amount, not enough to turn the soup reckless, just enough that the surface changed, just enough to make the room smell like 10 years earlier. Mateo stared at the bowl for half a second, like he was afraid it might be taken back. Then he tasted it. He closed his eyes, not dramatically, not like a movie scene, more like someone hearing his own first language after months of translation. There you are, he said, but he was not talking to me. He was talking to the version of dinner that still remembered him. I almost cried over a spoonful of soup, which felt stupid until I realized that dignity is usually restored through stupidly small things. The front door opened before either of us heard the car. Elena came in carrying a pharmacy bag and one of those expressions that means the evening already failed somewhere outside the room. Then she saw the bowl. A few golden crumbs clung to the rim. That was all. No spilled medicine, no emergency, no disaster, just evidence. She set the bag down very carefully. "What is that?" she asked. Nobody answered right away. The silence made it worse, which was unfair, because silence also happened to be the most honest thing in the room. Finally, I said, "He asked for a little." She looked at Mateo, not me. "You know why we stopped that?" He nodded. "I know why you stopped it," he said. There was no venom in his voice, which somehow made the sentence harder to survive. Elena turned to me then, and I saw two truths at once. 1. She was angry. 2. She was tired enough that anger was the only sturdy shape her love still knew how to make. "You undermined me," she said. And there it was. Not, that could hurt him. Not, I got scared when I saw it. You undermined me. The sentence landed with a weight none of us could pretend not to recognize. Because now the story was not about soup. It was about authority. Who gets to decide what care means? Who has to enforce it? Who is allowed to feel familiar inside a body that has become a project? I said, "I wasn't trying to prove you wrong." She laughed once, but not because anything was funny. "Then why do it?" Mateo kept staring at the bowl. I think he already knew I was about to say something that would hurt the person who had been trying hardest not to let him disappear. But some truths stay cruel, whether you speak them or not. Because he had to ask for it like he was doing something shameful, I said. And for 1 second, I couldn't tell if we were keeping him safe or just keeping him managed. The room went still. Elena looked like a person who had carried far too much alone and had just been told that the carrying itself had changed shape. Mateo looked like a man who hated being the reason other people were hurting. And I looked like someone who had finally realized that family care can become a machine, so gradually nobody notices when it starts asking for obedience first. No one apologized that night. No one won either. Elena rinsed the pharmacy cup, set out his tablets, and moved around the kitchen with the clipped precision of a person trying not to cry. Mateo finished every spoonful. Not fast, not greedily, calmly, like somebody reclaiming 1 inch of familiar ground. Later, while washing the blue bowl, one rubbed my thumb across the rim where a few crumbs had stuck and thought about all the ways love can become procedural. How easy it is to call something care when it also gives you control. How easy it is to call something reckless when it reminds you that the person you are helping still has a self that does not belong to the system. I still do not know whether I made the medically correct choice. That is the least interesting part of what happened. What I know is this. My uncle asked for one small thing in a voice I had never heard him use before. And once I heard that voice, I could never again pretend our rules were only about health. Sometimes the line between helping someone and quietly replacing them is no wider than a pinch of crumbs on the rim of a bowl.
Thank you for watching. If this story pulled you in, do me one favor. Hit like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so the next one finds you the moment it drops. Remember, nothing is ever just what it seems. See you on the next one.